Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Life is better. Life is better now. The Seattle Seahawks 2-game winning streak, 2 divisional game winning streak. Better times are here. We just needed to be a little bit patient, but it came out. And things are looking a lot better. I'm feeling better. I think Brandon's feeling better about not only this current team, but the future. The future of this team next year, the year after. It's all starting to fall into place. But we got to dissect it a little bit more than that today. I am Brendan. That is Brandon. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Like you said, when you're riding high in first place, it's nothing but everything's wonderful. Sunshine, roses, the air smells better.
Yeah. We are in first place, but that's a delicate thing, right? We're not in first place by 3 games. We're in first place by a tiebreaker. So hopefully they can keep it up. But we have seen something beyond what I think any of us expected over these last few games, particularly on the defensive side. So let's talk a little bit first about this Cardinals game before we pull into this Jets thing. Again, we don't really do post-game stuff on this show that much, but that's a game that I think warrants a little bit of a discussion because that was it's pretty clear what part of the team that we're really happy with right now and what part of the team that maybe we want to see a little bit of improvement from. But let's eat dessert first, right? Let's eat our dessert first, and then we eat the vegetables later. So let's start with his defense. The turnaround over these last 3 games has been something that I didn't think we had in us. And where do you think it starts? How do you think this turnaround was made possible?
Well, I think it's probably a few different things that come together here. We can't, I think, ignore the fact that Mike McDonald needed a little bit of extra time to get his system in place here and even now it's probably not even here fully in place, Brendan, where, he still probably has extra items that he's wanted him to get kind of mastered down. So that comes into play. The inside linebackers would be the first, response to go to say, well, it's just them with that. And I think that they're carrying a big part of this too, but it is that other aspect of him being able to get a little bit more into the playbook. And then just some other little supporting parts around that, not little supporting parts. I mean, Kobe Bryant's playing really tremendous football at safety. And since he's taken over there and given you an upgrade, since he's taken over there, Roy Robertson-Harris, early rundown defender who is serving that role and serving it well in order to allow Derek Hall and Boye Mafe to keep their snaps, relatively good so that they can still be very good pass rushers. So it's a bit of all of that along with the buy-in factor. And you watch defense, Brendan, and watching the All-22, and you're seeing guys down the line, as we had heard Mike talk about, do your job. And you're watching guys down the line, a couple plays where almost like they're all kind of two-gapping a little bit. I know they don't pure two-gap, but it's just where you can just see them just locking out the linemen down the line. Everybody in their job, in their gap. It's a beautiful thing to see, but it's also much different than what we saw earlier in the year.
Yeah. The fundamental difference is the ability to get it done on early downs. First down, second down. We're not letting these other teams avoid third down or get into 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2 every time. And against a team like the Cardinals, you really notice that because like you said last week, what the Cardinals have done a really good job of this year is make it so Kyler doesn't have to throw the ball that much. They run the ball, they protect him. And he throws the ball, 27 times a game on average? Mm-hmm. And he's been great in that capacity. But in a game like this where the Cardinals couldn't run the ball at all, James Conner had maybe the worst game of his career, you get to expose some of the weaknesses. You get to kind of pull that back and show that at the end of the day, he is a above average to good quarterback and not much more than that. And you force him into those situations, he will make a lot of mistakes. And in this game, I don't know about mistakes, but he had very little success.
Yeah, I think that it's a deal. I was on the roundtable show last night trying to kind of put this to a Cardinal fan a bit who's been a little bit slow on the Geno Smith aspect of things and making the case about quarterback play and supporting cast. And you and I have talked about a lot about this stuff. And Kyler has had the opportunity this year, Brendan, to have maybe the most consistent offensive line in the division as far as pass protection and run blocking goes. Yeah, he hasn't the best defense, decent pass catchers, and a system that was going to limit him in what he was going to be asked to do. And what you had happen in this game was no running game, and your pass protection started to fail on you. The defense was good, but it's another indicator of what I like to say of here's another represent example of what happens if you have the quarterback start to lose these supporting parts around them. And you can say, well, hey, this number 1 overall pick guy, he's an ultra talented guy. He's into year 6. He's in that, what they were trying to tell us a couple weeks ago, he's in that advanced area of his game now. He's the best version of himself he's ever been. These type of things happen. But when you really break it all down, to my mind, and this is my really growing theory on the quarterback position, you really boil it down, you got to spend a little bit more time looking first those supporting parts rather than getting so enamored with this guy's flourishes of skills and all of the things that he brings to the table individually. Because even if he doesn't have those things working for him, he's going to be highly limited as a quarterback. And this is not just with Kyler, in my opinion, Brendan, this is most quarterbacks we're talking about here. So it's not just about him. It's about, this is really by nature should be a general, conversation in regards to all QBs to a degree. But yeah, we were able to bring him down, keep him neutralized, remove his legs too. We didn't let him get anywhere with his legs, Brendan, which I thought was very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about the pass rush a little bit there. That was definitely the best Leonard Williams game since he's gotten here. And he's had some good ones. He's been good for us. But
I'd offer it's probably one of the best defensive tackle performances we've seen in at least the last 10 years.
Right. 2.5 sacks, could have easily had 3.5 with that forced fumble that Kyler just barely managed to get his arm going forward in time, I think.
Did he?
It was really close. I didn't think they were going to overturn it. I thought that it was too debatable, but I did think his arm was probably going forward. It was very close, though.
That's my thing with it. If they're going to make the call in the field, it's got to be an incontrovertible to overturn it. And if it's not, then you leave the call in the field. And I didn't think there was incontrovertible to change that from what the call was there.
Yeah, I didn't think they were going to flip it, but they did. And I get it. I'm not angry about it, but that was a dominant performance. And going back to as recently as last week, I was worried about Leonard Williams because he wasn't practicing with the foot injury. I was thinking to myself, this guy's not right. And I don't know if he's going to be right the rest of the season. Well, he doesn't need his foot, I guess.
It's a vet. Everything's sore at this time of year. So probably some of that too is just them, trying to rest him and give him those extra days as you can, because you're getting deep into the season on a guy who's played a lot of football.
Right. And the thing that's really kind of interesting about the way the defense played in this game in particular, but also other recent games, they're not really overtaxing anybody right now. Everybody is in this very healthy and normal rotation. Nobody's playing more than 50 snaps. In this game, nobody played more than 40 snaps on the defensive line. Byron Murphy played like 24 snaps, so he played like less than 40% of the game, I think, which was actually really, really impressive given the fact that we're still not getting anything from Mike Morris or Miles Adams or any of those guys. So it feels sustainable. This feels like something you can carry forward for the rest of the season because you're not riding anybody into the ground.
No, you've got a defensive line that's been pretty well put together, and the health's now come together good with it, where the guys have been able to maintain throughout most of the year. So you are in a good position, and it's only going to get even potentially a little bit better here in the next 2 weeks with Uchenna Nwosu coming off the IR, and how that'll allow you to set up that edge depth at just the perfect time as we are wearing down the season, where guys are probably like, if I could take another 5, 6, 7 snaps off my back a game, 10 snaps back off my game here, that'd be kind of helpful here to keeping me a little bit more fresher down the stretch.
Yeah. And that might give you some flexibility with Draymond Jones, because Draymond Jones has basically been a pure edge rusher this year. And by the way, I have to say, he's not playing poorly lately. There are holes in his game. He's not a good run defender, but he is, according to Pro Football Focus, he leads the team in pressures, which how crazy is that?
It's pretty crazy. It doesn't feel like that necessarily on what you've seen from. I mean, it's not like, to your point. Is a selling one. He's been a pretty decent player, but he doesn't feel necessarily like that versus some of the other guys that have created the pressures. But then again, even the guys started out like Mafe and Hall with really good pressure rates, and to begin things have kind of slowed down just a little bit on that front throughout the year.
Yeah, and Mafe's missed a couple games, and Big Cat has missed some time as well. If they had played the whole season, they'd probably be ahead of him. But like Draymond, again, he's not a pure edge rusher. He's never been that, and he's had to be for the last year and a half almost, because of these injuries. When we get Nwosu back, I wonder if we see him line up inside a little bit more, and maybe that allows him to get back to some of the stuff he was doing in Denver and some of the stuff he was doing at the start of his Seahawks career.
It's possible. I think that the tough part there is you're having a hard time getting even Byron Murphy snaps to the 3 tech, and Leonard's playing like a monster in there. There may not be enough snaps in there to be had on it, but it gives you the flexibility if you want to use it.
Right. More front seven stuff. I mean, Tyrese Knight, I keep waiting for the other shoe because I know how raw he was coming out of college. I know how much that tape. I mean, I think we both looked at the tape on him at UTEP, and it was not great tape. So I think we were, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's not dropping. He continues to look good pretty much every week, and he continues to look like a guy that you can build with going beyond this season. And I don't know where this came from, but I'm liking what I see.
Yeah, I think if he was going to give you some of the shoe drop, it would have been more of an immediate thing. And the fact that he stacked these performances so consistently back to training camp and preseason probably lets us know that it's pretty well legit at this point. And he is fit into the starting role effortlessly. He's being well graded by PFF. Him and Ernest Jones seem to be a very good tandem in how they work off of each other off the tape. Kid looks like part of the plan going forward here at the will linebacker position.
Yeah. And little things like that are going to go a long way in accelerating this little retool. Guys like him and guys like Kobe Bryant becoming viable players for us for these next few years as starters on this defense. That is going to make all the difference in us actually being able to maybe become a Super Bowl contender next year.
Yeah, you 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, Brendan. We don't know what we have at right tackle. We don't know what we have at our 2 inside linebacker positions. We're not sure about the outside corner position with Trey Brown moving on in free agency. Rayshawn Jenkins didn't look like necessarily the answer next to Julian Love at the safety position. And these were all kind of, okay, these are necessities that you're going to have to deal with immediately this offseason, not long-term things you'd have to kind of get around to. But now these things are starting to solidify themselves in season, and you take those off the board, and it starts to narrow down so many more things, less things you have to go through and find. Especially if you have a guy like Job, you second round tender on him. You look at the line; they're set up on the defensive line pretty much as is. Not much needed really to be added unless you're going to release a couple of guys here or there. But defensive wise, you really could come into this offseason theoretically to a degree. Obviously, you want to do a little more, but Brendan, I'm nose tackle. If you do sign Ernest Jones, it's not in a bad spot either. To your point on now, you can really maybe hammer that offensive line or just really deal with the small deficiencies that are there on the team at that point. So it is a big difference from where we were just about a month and a half ago.
Yeah, and that's I think that a big part of it is just having this coach that really understands how to get the most out of some of these guys. In different hands, Tyrese Knight would probably not be looking like this. In different hands, Kobe Bryant probably wouldn't be looking like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say with Kobe because he's just been, I think, part of this, such a guy that's worked his butt off to get what he's gotten done. I just don't think you accomplish what he accomplishes merely by moving into a different scheme as much as and he's in the right scheme. Don't make no mistake about that. He's in the one that's going to get the most out of him. But also, I get the feeling from him that he's just a really hard worker in getting himself to this place of where he's gotten to. But to your point on that, Mike is a guy that we're seeing across the board with these guys that I don't think defensively we're looking at any of these defensive players this year and saying, oh, he should be getting more out of this guy. I mean, maybe Byron Murphy, but that's by part the fact that he's been given a nose tackle situation that's so lean and requires Murphy to play out there by necessity. But absent that, everybody else, it seems like he's gotten Derek Hall to take a step forward. Murphy's been pretty much right where he was at least last year, but nobody's taking a step back, and Jaron Hall's having a good year. Julian Love's having probably his better year in the last couple of years. So yeah, he's been legit.
Yeah, Witherspoon's starting to rally a little bit after the little bit of a sophomore slump. I mean, that was a really good game, I think, that he had on Sunday. Really happy with where he's going the last couple. So yeah, I mean, defense, it was basically a perfect game from the defense. You can't ask for much more than that. On every level, maybe some of the tackling, Rayshawn didn't look ready to tackle in that game. Maybe we shouldn't be that surprised by that. Was his first game back after over a month, but he looked a little sloppy out there. Other than that, though, I mean, you can't get much more out of your defense than that.
Dominant effort, man. It's the Legion of Boom style effort that they brought out there where we'll put this team on our back today. Essentially, they outscored the offense for the most part. I know the field goal, the extra point didn't go in, but they outscored the Cardinals on their own. And That was from start to finish an absolute dominant effort. The crowd noise was back into it much better than it's been at times throughout the year, which I think just you can see how that just aids that defense that much more when they've got that wind at their back. And it was a great performance to see, on top of the fact that this isn't just one game in the mix of a season, and that this is now the third game in a row that you've been sort of stacking these defensive performances up like this.
So great stuff going on there. The other side, we got to talk a little bit about this, because that's the side of the ball starting to have some issues. And things started out well overall this year, but there's been a little bit of regression. And I mean, to me, the number one problem this offense has right now is they are giving away the game pre-snap. And you saw it really well in this game with Budda Baker. Every time we ran the ball, he's sprinting up to the line of scrimmage before the snap because he knows we're running the ball. So we are giving away the game before the play even starts. And to me, that's the number one problem this team needs to address.
Yeah, they're not very creative. There's very little misdirection on the offense. I think Grubb is using better the motion-based stuff pre-snap than Waldron did, but it's not necessarily something that's just all over the place that you see. The run game, for whatever reason, it's is the run game predictable because you're running it out of certain formations with certain personnel groupings and they're picking that up? Is it that they can just see where your running game is going on tape because you're showing certain tells by your linemen and all that? I don't know, but I do say that this has been an issue throughout the year where defensive players, you can obviously see pre-snap that they are locked in right where everything is going in the run game. There is no surprising them. There is no confusion on it. And yeah, I think that is a place at the head to where Grubb's got to try to start to look at. There's a couple things I think he needs to do adjustment-wise, or should at least try to see if he can do adjustment-wise to find answers rather than trying the same thing. But that is one thing that you see on that run game that's stopping the run game, is that, yeah, you can't block it well, but they're also seeing it coming from a mile away.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is the formations. I think based on formation and personnel, these opposing defenses are able to look at the Seahawks and just go, okay, they're going to run the ball here or they're going to throw the ball here. And that's, I think, the number one thing that Grubb needs to figure out, because you got to, every offensive coordinator in the league, they do things to try to help their offensive line. And right now, Grubb is not when he's doing stuff like that. So there needs to be a little bit more conflict with the way this team play calls relative to their personnel on the field at the time.
You think it'd be opening up a lot to misdirection here, Brennan, if they're going to be diving in on these run plays like this, where they have all gas, no brakes to go, like you saw Budda Baker do, and we've seen a couple of defenders do this year. You would think that you work off the play action, you work a flea flicker, which we know, of course, he's got in his attack to use the trick play element. You think that this would be some of the way that you would pivot as an adjustment then dealing with that, rather than just, oh, well, every time we run, they're just going to see where it's going and then drive in and hammer our running back in the backfield. Well, no. Okay. Well, there's got to be some stuff in your playbook that's got to counter off that. They're going to be that uber aggressive, right? Mm-hmm. Especially this playbook. That's what we saw at UW, everything going this way with the eye candy and then send you back over here, or you over here. And then they send you back over this way with where they're flowing the play. And I know pass protection holds you back a little bit on this stuff, but it can't be the end all be all on this one as to why it's being held back.
Yeah, and that's holding the running game back just as much as the poor play of the offensive line. Like, everyone talks about the offensive line, rightfully so, because it's bad. But the fact that the defense kind of knows what's coming pre-snap is just as big a drag, I think. Yeah. So if that can get figured out, some of those really, really ugly offensive line reps are going to start to go away just by virtue of the fact that the opposing defense won't know what to do yet. Until after the ball snapped.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think it's a major part to it.
So can't run the ball. There were a lot of plays in this game where the Seahawks left points on the board. I think there were like 2 instances where we had the ball in field goal range on third down, and then we get sacked, and then we have to punt it. I think that happened twice in this game, which, again, that makes you wonder. Maybe those are just plays where you need to run it and kick the field goal and just be like, okay,
I think it happened once, but we had the interception also down there. I think it might be you're thinking of those 2 things where you had points taken off the board in those 2 moments.
Right. That might have been it. There was maybe another situation where we had the ball at like the 40 and we pick up a few yards. We could have kicked it, but we got sacked. A lot of sacks on third down, a lot of that going around, which again, to me, it's just all about that interior. I thought Laken Tomlinson had one of his worst games of the year, and that's really saying something.
Yeah. No, I know it wasn't good.
Haynes, I thought was serviceable. I didn't notice anything super offensive from him, I guess.
I mean, it was pretty well. They were. It kind of comes down to it. Even Lucas in this case, who was really well graded last week, wasn't particularly well graded. I don't think he had a bad game necessarily, but wasn't necessarily, also doing necessarily even the work he was doing last week. So the line definitely was back in a position again this week of from run blocking to pass protection, holding you back. Geno had only 31 snaps in this game, just as many sacks on Geno as there was on Kyler, who I think ended up with like 37, 41 attempts, something like that. Which is not significant more, but it just again shows you at how an efficient rate. Now there were some really good. I think there were some of the better pockets we've seen this year at times in this game for Geno, where he'd have all day back there to survey and look through, but then there would be countered with the quick pressure stuff on other plays. It was never consistently in there and holding it. So yeah, it's the line, kind of does remain in the place it's been. You'd like to see it getting better. In Laken's case, it's like, man, he's been slowly kind of getting a little bit by a little bit better, and just get to that league average spot and then gives you another one of those real bottom basement kind of games where buddy, come on, we need you here, man,
Yeah. I think it just is what it is with him. He's old, his body's breaking down, and hopefully he can kind of keep it together just enough for the last several games this season, but he's not going to be here next year, so I don't feel the need to build my little ball of hate on that guy at this point. There's no way he's here next year.
No, it's fine for what it is on it. It is what it is. I will say to your point again on the losing the 2 points and a place to get to, we're both very much supporters of Geno Smith, but there's got to be some adjustments here from Grubb in how he's coaching Geno Smith on some of this stuff, I think, too, where it's got to be a little bit more, put this under wraps a bit more inside the red zone with Geno. Put this under wraps a little bit more when you're getting into this field goal range, because you got to start to play to your defense. If this defense is going to continue to put these performances together, you got to stop acting like you got to score every single time to counter what they're doing. If they're able to hold offenses down, then every time you're in field goal or in scoring range, come away with points. That's the way that's got to work, because you're having too often times this year where you're just not getting any points, bad turnover, and it doesn't need to happen. In Geno's case, on both of those two turnovers, it's partly a bit on Grubb on the fumble where he's gotten back there on a 7-step drop again, Brendan, looking down the field deep, right? You got a third, what was it? 3rd and 4, wasn't it? So 3rd and 3 on that play. They get sacked, stripped, fumbled there in that moment.
Oh yeah, that sounds about right. I was trying to remember the fumble, but I remember it.
It was a play call that I was like, I didn't like Geno not understanding a little bit of, I gotta get the ball out of my hands here. If I hit that back foot, let it go. I've got to stay in field goal range here from where we're at. And then Grubb's case, he's got Walker in there and Max pass protect in that moment. Why? Because he wants the longer developing route down the field, right? He's trying to get the pass pro to hold up, but Walker should be out there in the flat, shouldn't he? Isn't that just throw out the flat, see if he can go get the 3 yards? And if he doesn't, hey, you lost no yardage, and you can at least still get the field goal in what's looking like it's going to be a very tight game. And Geno the same way on the interception later on, which was maybe the worst interception of Geno's this year, quite frankly. There's been some brutal ones, and that one I think was probably the worst one we've seen of him. He played not a bad game around the other side of it. He was pretty good around the other end. He made some great plays, but those are two plays where we talk about, okay, how do we push this forward? What are lessons you take from this game that you start to carry forward off of themes we've seen this year? I think from Geno's perspective, he's got to say, okay, we're getting down there. I've got to be more protective. I think inside the 20 and red zone in particular, let him run loose and wild like a wild horse on the open range, Brendan, between the 20s. But inside the 20, in the red zone, okay, let's tamp it down. Let's be a little bit more careful here, big guy.
Yeah, I agree with that. That was a tough one. He was late, right? Because Lockett was open, and then he threw it after he was no longer open. He had it, and then he waited too long.
To me, you don't throw it. I mean, and if it's the wait late thing, that could be a little bit of it that he saw it a little bit late. But what it really needs to be is what it really needs to be is you go take the 3 or 4 yards if you can't get the first down scrambling, because the door was open right there for him to take the yard scramble wise. You get a closer field goal in that game. You go get the field goal. That's 10 points. As a quarterback, you're managing the game. You're managing what's going on and through like a coach would. And a coach in that moment, if they're quarterbacking like Geno is, they're taking the 3 yards if that's all I get. Or I think Geno gets the first down if he runs, quite frankly. And I think he knew it. But let's just say it is only the 3 yards, Brendan. Like he looked at it and he saw in that moment, and Geno said, if I go and run this, I'm only going to get the 3. I'm going to just try to, get the touchdown instead. No, get the 10 points in a close game with your defense playing great. That's game over at that point. Done. Cardinals aren't going to be able to do anything else about it.
Yeah, he probably doesn't want to run because he's old. He probably just doesn't. It doesn't come naturally to him anymore, and it's got to start coming because the way this offensive line's playing, we just need those extra 20 yards a game.
He's got to do it. I know, like you said, I know he doesn't want to do it. He's older. He doesn't want to get injured. All that stuff. But this is where offensively, you got to look at yourself, like I said, and take stock of where you are, where the defense is. And offensively, you're not finding the consistent footing throughout this year here. Every game, you are just searching and searching and searching through. So if that's the case, Grubb has got to do more manufacturing for the offense. Got to do more to try to create confusion and misdirection so his defenses can't key in there. Geno has got to find a way to take points where they do exist because points are going to be sometimes hard to come by the nature of where you're going offensively at times this year. And use your legs. This is also a part of all this is use all of the options available to you to make this offense more successful. If you were able to be successful just kind of in the pocket of dropping back and slinging it all over the field, that would have been great. But you don't have the line to do that. And we've learned this pretty succinctly, I think, here as we are into week 12, 13 here.
Yeah. Like you said, if the defense was still terrible, I wouldn't care about that interception because he's got to try to score the touchdown in that spot because you need to score every point you can. But that's not happening anymore. This defense is playing over the last 3 games. They've been probably top 3 in the league or very close to it, if not. And you can ride that a little bit. You can ride that as a quarterback. And Geno has not had the benefit of being able to ride much of anything so far in his Seahawks career. He's been the guy that people ride, but things are changing. And looking over these last 6 games, for the most part, I don't think that's going to change. I think this defense is going to continue to play at a really high level.
Yeah, I agree too. I would anticipate until they show you differently, in my opinion. So I would lean on that as an offense into acting with that kind of understanding of things. Still try to be explosive and all that, but Grubb, less of the 7-step drops, less of having Geno looking down the field for 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds because you're not just giving him a quick option to get the ball in a playmaker's hand. Let him go work.
So beyond that, some of the bright spots from this game would be, of course, JSN. I love those tunnel screens, by the way. Those tunnel screens get me excited. Those are some of my favorite plays.
Yeah, this is stuff we've talked on the show, I think, endlessly week after week about the tunnel screens because it's one of those things that's right out of this is a root from the tree of what we're talking about, where there's a variety of things an offensive coordinator and a quarterback can do working together to just try to sort of manufacture some offense. It does require him to kind of box himself in a little bit at times, and they don't do it 24/7, but just a more hearty, let's lock into just some more of this sort of simulated sort of stuff like those bubble screens are because they're working really well for us. And it was great. Best play off that off that tunnel screen this year so far on that Jackson Smith catch and run.
Metcalf, good game for him overall. The 3rd and 8 play on the last drive. I mean, if Mahomes made that play, by the way, they'd still be talking about it on SportsCenter. That was actually a play that's going to get a little overlooked in this game. That was crazy, both escaping the pressure and hitting that throw in triple coverage. That was something else. And I was really happy that Geno got to redeem himself a little bit after the interception. I didn't want that to be the last thing he did in that game. So that was great.
Yeah, you got a final drive there to give you the 10 points and put that game basically away at that point by getting you on that final drive. They, I think, like 7 or 8 minutes off the clock on that last one drive too, which was big on just getting your defense where they're going to be fresh and all that. But he did enough, and you're right. It was a nice throw. Good job by DK to extend the play a little bit from the Russell Wilson days, where you learned with Russell to first route out there, immediately break it off. And you could see that with DK where it stop route not there. And then he just sort of slowly drifts his way back into the middle of the field, finding that kind of hole between the coverage.
I think that's really about it. Dixon, probably his best game of the year. Dixon was phenomenal.
He's really good. Yeah. I mean, he's so good every single week. It's hard to pinpoint on making one or the other, but he's a fantastic punter and by far the best punter at this point in Seahawks history.
Yeah. He really does have a chance to go down as one of the greatest punters of all time. Like if you take a look at his numbers, he's got a shot.
He does. No, he's on that road, man. He is legitimately on that road.
And I think that's about all we need to say about this Cardinals game. It was not the greatest game, but we saw good things, positive signs, and it feels like things are going in the right direction overall. So if you're a Seahawks fan, you're coming out of that game feeling better than you did going in.
Amen. And that's a physical team that takes it to teams every week and says, "Can you match this level of tenaciousness that we're going to want to come at you with? And if you can, we may not have your talent, but we're gonna fight. We're gonna battle you, and you better battle right back at us." I thought our Seahawks team did that in this game, and that's especially on what you did defensively. That's a big part of why you kept them down. Why James Conner, as you said, it maybe went career worst performance. It's because you came up to this game and you understood what was at stake and what you had to bring to get this win. You don't just get by in the Cardinals with just being better, more talented this year in this Cardinal team. They've gotten the buy-in from Gannon to where they will play hard every single week, and you have to take it from them.
Right. Yeah, we got the Cardinals to abandon the run, even though they were never behind by a lot in this game, because they were just like, the running game doesn't work. We can't do it. So
100%.
love it. Let's see here. We got a new member over here. We got Ernie Wren. Thank you for becoming a YouTube member. Thank you, Ernie. Appreciate that. And Cap CPLT Shaw. Thank you for the $4.99. Went to the game. We smacked Arizona. Loved it. K9, big game coming. Geno wins against former team. Go Hawks. Someone tell Lake and Tomlinson to stop getting flags, please. 3-0. Well, the flags in this game were the illegal formations on Lucas, where he was, I think, lined up in the backfield or something.
Yeah, they probably did that new rule that they've, if you have your butt lean back to the butt's got to be encompassing with the guard's butt or something. I forget the rule. They called it like the first game of the year in the Ravens game, and then they've just sort of stopped, but maybe it was that.
Yeah. I mean, it's really starting to get annoying how arbitrary these different refereeing crews will call things. Like, have you seen them call the hip drop tackle once this year in any game?
No, I haven't. No. And
I'm not against it because I'm not a big fan of the hip drop penalty, but you feel like they're going to whip it out at a really important time at some point in like the postseason. You're going to be like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And
that's the problem. Great. That's the problem with over legislating this game and putting too much penalties into this stuff, to your point, because you can get to a spot where stuff doesn't get called, but there's a penalty. It's in the penalty book, though. It's in the book. They can go to it any time. It's in the book. And it's like, well, yeah, but it should never have been created in the first place. It was a ridiculous tackle. It was a ridiculous rule.
Yeah, and it seems like I will say this so far, and this could change. The NFL referees have just decided, you know what? It is ridiculous. We're not gonna take it seriously. We're just not gonna call it.
Yeah, and good for them if that is the way that they've gone. But like you say, don't let this come up like, we're at the final drive of a Super Bowl and, it's 3rd and 7 and it's incomplete or it's complete and they stop the guy short of 3 downs and it's the Kansas City Chiefs. And then here comes the hip drop tackle flag for the first time in 13 weeks,
Yeah.
And the NFL fandom collectively rolls their eyes.
Yeah, you can feel it coming too. You can feel it coming.
Yeah, well, they've done it with defensive holding, man. I mean, that's one of those calls that we've seen in back-to-back Super Bowls that was the game-changing play for the Chiefs-Eagles game, where you didn't call defensive holding in the secondary throughout the whole game. Final drive by the Chiefs in that game against the Eagles, you call it. You got the Rams and the Bengals a couple of years ago, and final drive of the game, you've not called defensive holding all game. Why? Because in the playoffs, they don't tend to call that stuff. But you wait till a real precipitous moment to bring out the flag, because they've just been stopped, and it extends the drive in a major way on a game, the game-changing drive of the game. And, I hate that stuff. It's just like, let them play.
As for K9, who I didn't really mention him when we were talking about this game. Do you feel like there are still moments where he's trying to go 1-on-11 and just try to be Superman like he's back at Michigan State? I think there's a little bit of that going on here.
I think that there are times where, and this has come back to his rookie year, that the team talked to him about this on the dancing front, where I think that Walker is an insanely talented running back, and there's not any move in the book he can't bring. Stop and start, jump cut, quickness, speed, all that's there that he has in his bag, Brendan. But I do think that there's a part of me that tends to think with K9 that, if we were to give him the vision, like that, Madden score for him, I think his vision score would be not bad, but it would be a little low.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's a pure guy that's a real read it guy out there in the flow of things. And to your point, I think there are times where he just doesn't get right up in the hole. And I've seen a few all 22 shots, Brendan, where I'm looking at him going, why didn't you just take that hole up the middle there? Why didn't you take that 5-6 yards right there? You took this and bounced it outside. You don't want to stop him from doing that, but is he doing it too much? I think would be the question at play. And I think is my answer to that would be, yeah, a little bit. Especially when I see him at times turning down those holes that are legitimately there, and he's trying to just do a little bit too much extra.
Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. The big picture is still it's really criminal that we're probably not going to get 1,000 rushing yards out of this guy with the way he's playing. And
and sorry to interrupt you, but this is also that accumulation thing. I'm not trying to make any excuse to the offensive line, but the same thing I talk about with Geno and the accumulation of him with the hits and the sacks. And eventually then when he has clean pockets or moments where he shouldn't make the bad decision, a bad decision starts to be made now because he's got that ticking timer in his head of I'm always under pressure. I'm always under pressure. I'm always under pressure. Likewise with Walker, every time I get the ball, I don't have a hole. Every time I get the ball, I don't have a hole. Every time I get the ball, I don't have a hole. Now he gets a ball, has a hole. He doesn't think he's got a hole and he bounces it outside like that. So this is where we come back to get the offensive line right, have them start to create more holes, have them start to pass protect more consistently. And you create good habits with these players rather than the bad habits that get created out of the necessity of trying to do something when all hell's breaking loose.
Right. I agree with that. And hopefully we don't have to have this happen again where we have a running back that has a 90 grade on PFF who may not get to 1,000 yards on the season because we do that bad a job supporting him. And, if you're John Schneider, I just hope you go into this offseason thinking to yourself, I can never let that happen again. Like whatever it takes, I can never let this happen again.
And it's been building to this for years. So this situation with the line maybe being the worst it's ever been over the past few years, it's been building and building to this to where you've been sort of just slightly slapped. Now you're getting punched dead in your face. What are you going to do? You're going to keep staying down in this road or is it time for a bit of a change on how your outlook on that line is and how you really truly deal with it?
Right. Let's see here. We have another one from Shaw here. Thank you for the $4.99, Shaw. Love Geno. Stop tossing picks. Throw it out of bounds or run it. I don't know why he doesn't run it more. Maybe too old. I think the age has something to do with it, but most quarterbacks don't like to run just in general. They want to throw it. They want to be pocket quarterbacks, and they always would prefer to throw the ball, I think.
Yeah, he's also in what is for him a contract year. I know he has another year after this, but he's wanting to be paid after this season. And he's not going to get paid if he injures himself running around there and tears an ACL. He last year was running around in that Giants game and the guy rolled up on his legs. I'm guessing that's a little bit in his mind where it's like, look, I was running out of bounds trying to protect myself and I still got rolled up on. And that's where he just says, if I go and start scrambling, I'm going to get hurt because I can't control like I control in the pocket what's happening. And to a degree, I understand where he's coming from and that's what's at stake right now a little bit. But at the end of the day, we're down the home stretch here, big guy. We're in first place. You don't have to do it for a full season, but you need to do it for the back third. And if this offense has any hope to get to the playoffs, to make noise in the playoffs, I think he's going to have to use his legs a couple times a game, just at the very least to keep defenses honest.
Yeah, like the way he did it against the Niners was beautiful. That final drive, you pull it out. They're not expecting it. They're not ready for it. And then, boom, he runs for like 40 yards on the game-winning drive.
Yeah, I think he doesn't have to do it a lot, but you just have to pick some moments in these games where you do utilize it because the teams are pass rushing out of control against the Seattle Seahawks. And what I mean by that is it's the opposite, Brendan, of the mush rush against the mobile quarterback. It is the guys flying wide off the edge. It's guys flying wildly out of their gap lanes as the pass rushers from the inside the defensive tackle positions. And you're seeing it over and over again where they're going almost past Geno Smith to where all he's got to do is climb the ladder and then go take the 5, 6, 7 yards in front of him. This is in conjunction with the defense on the back end, dropping a lot of depth with their zones at times where they'll drop the depth with zones, pass rushers out of their lanes. Bam, there's that easy 5, 6, 7 yards right there for you. Exactly the scenario that he got intercepted on, where guys are all dropping to their depth, pass rushers going wildly out of their lanes. You've got the first down for 7 yards on third down. It's there for you to get. And yet you're no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Like, yeah, you got to do it, buddy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but yeah, I think that's more of a universal quarterback thing. Quarterbacks don't want to run unless they absolutely have to. Like even Russell Wilson, who is one of the greatest running quarterbacks of all time. I don't think he wanted to run as much as he did. I think he did because he mostly had to. And when he had any available option to him to be able to throw the ball, he would take it.
Yeah, especially as you got older. Back to the older point, you're a younger cat, you're probably willing to run around a little bit more, but as you get older, you understand how much it hurts, and it hurts a lot more to run around. And so you are going to do it. But I saw this with Russell too at times where you start to turn down plays that are there for you to take, and it's just you can't let yourself leave your mentality of using your legs on this. If you got legs to use, especially in Geno's case, Russell's case, they had legs to use. You use that element of your game. It is a huge thing to be able to bring to bear, and it's something where again it's an easy peasy scramble for you if you've got no quarterback spy on you, which a little bit older Russell and Geno, where he's out there, not going to have quarterback spies on him.
Yeah. Maybe next year you can be a pure pocket quarterback, Geno. Maybe next year, but this year, no.
Yeah, need a little bit more this year by using your legs.
Holiest hand grenade, new holiest hand grenade. Previously we had old and inferior holiest hand grenade. Now we have the new and improved holiest hand grenade.
Well, he got the YouTube's cracking down, I think, on his username. So because his username had he had to change grenade spelling, I think, because I think they shut down his other account for that, which is silly. But
yeah, I mean, isn't grenade like the name of a Bruno Mars song? Like, come on, did you take down that video? No.
Billion views.
Thank you for the $2. Rumors are we might go after Trevor Lawrence. This should be pretty easy to address, I think.
Yeah, I obviously if they were able to go do it, that's one thing. I don't know. I have heard the rumors of this, Brendan. So the rumor of this has popped out. I will say that. Trevor Lawrence right now just signed a contract extension. So, if they move him in 2025, there's 133. Yeah, I think, can they get this done? I guess over the cap, maybe they could. No, they I don't think they can pull it off. The dead money with the bonus, I don't think it's going to work for them to make this happen. Option bonus, workout bonus. I'm just looking at the over the cap stuff for the guaranteed. So I mean, if the Jaguars are willing to do it and move it, I know that not a lot of people like Trevor Lawrence. I still think the Jaguars have kind of messed that situation up there with him. The team does need to make a decision on the quarterback situation long term. I'm completely fine potentially with getting Geno on I think is going to be a cost-effective deal for the team, and Geno gets his last contract extension. But if they want to make a run and you could figure out a way to do it with the contract, which I think would be the main inhibiting factor, it wouldn't be probably the draft capital. Teams could probably come to a common understanding on that part, but I don't think that you could figure it out with the money. Oh, you're muted, dude.
Sorry. Yeah, it's kind of like, I think we talked about Dak Prescott in this capacity last week, and the contract just makes it almost impossible. Yeah. And by the way, I think that, Seahawks fans would riot if we did this. Now, I wouldn't, because I like Trevor Lawrence. I think he's a really good quarterback. But people would not, this would definitely get people upset, I think, initially. Now, I think the idea is kind of sound in theory, but the money makes it impossible. Again, 133 million dead on a team that is probably a good coach away from being competitive again. Like, I think that Doug Peterson lost that team this year. Roy Robertson Harris was one of the locker room leaders for that Jacksonville team this year, and he was making it very public that he hated Doug Peterson, and that was one of the big reasons why he wanted out of there. To me, if they can be the team that gets Ben Johnson this offseason, which I think there's a good chance of that, I think Ben Johnson could get Trevor Lawrence back on his career arc the way we were thinking it was going to go.
I can see that certainly be the way it goes with it. So I think that I know you're right. There's a view on Trevor Lawrence of that. He's at this bust place. He's basically ranked right next to Geno Smith this year as far as the PFF rankings, around that top 10 rate with this bad Jaguars team, in my opinion. But I think it's probably the more likely scenario the way you drew it up, or another offensive guy like Monken going there from the Ravens. Something like that would probably be where this would really go with that. But
Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan. I don't think there's any way that the Niners are going to be able to make that happen. But
Mhm.
Maybe.
Well, no, I'm saying if the Niners are actually going to fire
Oh,
him.
yeah, if they fire him. Yeah, that's also nice. That might be the place he goes, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, who would be Kyle's? What would be the pick of the litter in the NFL? Would that be the pick of the litter of jobs? Because Kyle's going to basically pick the
I guess
best
if you
landing
like
spot.
Shadur, you go to the Raiders, right? If you like Shadur, you
Oh,
go to the Raiders.
you can't do Raiders not with Harris and his light purse strings. I don't think you could pull that there. I think it'd be
Huh.
probably the Jaguars, man, because you have the
Yeah.
quarterback in place. I mean, the other spots are Browns might fire Stefanski, maybe. Ew, nobody wants that one.
Giants are pretty bad, not
Yeah,
them.
they're in a tough.
Cowboys are okay because they got Dak in place, but they don't really have a lot else.
You got an older Dak coming off another
Yeah,
season-ending lower leg injury, and you have Jerry Jones still there in the building doing his general manager thing. I mean, the
yeah,
Bears organization's is a joke. They're probably going to move on their guy. So I don't know. That's probably the best landing space of any of the jobs in the league.
yeah. Jets are not good. Bengals are good. Bengals could be good because you got Burrow, I guess, but you've also got a terrible owner.
Are they going to fire their coach though? Too.
I would think so. If they don't, that's kind of weird to me. I mean,
Well, remember how many years they kept Captain Fantastic there, Marvin Lewis.
yeah,
I
but
mean,
Marvin Lewis got that team into the playoffs a lot. Like Zach Taylor's now missed the playoffs, what, 2 years in a row? And this year they're probably going to have a top 10 pick.
but it's also he got him to the Super Bowl, which Marvin Lewis never did.
Yeah.
That's a team
What,
that historically is Sam Weish and Marvin Harris. I mean, they just don't. They're not a team that moves off coaches like other teams move off coaches
yeah.
quickly.
Saints is not that good because of their salary cap situation. I wouldn't want to go there. Yeah, it's Jacksonville. It's Jacksonville.
Yeah. So that I think you bring it up. That's probably where they went out because they can get the brightest offensive mind. And why move Lawrence if you can bring a bright offensive mind in there to reclamate a guy that you're already in bed with on so much money?
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Randy McDaniel, thank you for the $4.99. Can Geno move into game manager mode? To me, he's at his best when asked to throw the rock around the yard. What we need is close to mistake-free ball. I think this is kind of what you were talking about a minute ago with Geno.
Yeah, that's why I wouldn't try to take away from Geno what makes Geno really good, Randall, which would be like you say, force him into more of a game manager mode where you got a good defense now, because you don't run the ball well enough to do that. You need your quarterback to throw the ball. You need him to be what he's been by and large this year. I think that's where I would be as a man. If I was the head coach, I'd be sitting Geno down with saying, all right, Geno, when you're in the shadow of your own end zone or when you're in the red zone, that's when I'm going to turn you into a game manager right now, because I have to save you from yourself a little bit here, because those are the places of the field where you're trying to go too much into captain superhero mode, and it's causing problems when you do that down there. So I think that's where you save the player from himself a little bit. You don't change his whole game up. You just say, look, this is what we've got to do at this point. I mean, how many bad interceptions have you had down there, man? You had 2 in one game against the Buffalo Bills alone. So let me help you on this, Geno. Here's how I want you to operate in those modes. You're going to go down. We're going to try to run the ball a little bit more. We're going to try to get creative with our designs in the red zone, but I want you throwing it away or using your legs. I don't want any of these last or take a sack. We come away points every time you're inside the 30-yard line. We're coming away with a point opportunity, Geno. And should be a pretty simple coaching point that I don't think takes Geno like, it's just so hard. It's just complicated. This is a complicated. No, you're hearing what I'm saying. So, and quite frankly, if I'm telling that coach that and he still can't do it going the rest of the year, that's a worrisome thing at that point. And it's worrisome if we're not telling him that at this point. Mike's on it. He mentioned in the press conference about it. So I think that this is going to be something we're going to see as an adjustment from the offense.
Yeah. And it sure would be nice if we could run the ball. If we could run the ball, then it'd be easy to go into game manager mode. You could treat Geno the same way the Cardinals treat Kyler Murray, right? You could basically do the same basic structure. But unfortunately, we don't have that. But there are some adjustments that you can make. And with the way this defense is playing, that's really all you need. You can win games without him having to be Superman all the time. And that's something that I want to ride until we can't ride it anymore. So he can do it, I think. We haven't seen him do it yet because he hasn't had the opportunity to do it until now because of the way the team has played. So it's going to be interesting to see if that can come together over these last 6 games here.
Yep. It will be. It's something to track and monitor with Geno to see if this is something to be cleaned up, because it is an important thing. And there are some people out there that are not as much pro Geno that will tell me and you that this is a bit of his fatal flaw, that he can't clean that part of his game up. That's what you get part and parcel with Geno as a player, from the good and the bad. I don't know that I agree with that, but something to kind of watch through the last few weeks of the season to see where that finishes up at.
I mean, the thing is, Geno actually has a lower than average rate of turnover worthy plays this season. He's actually been relatively clean. He has had a lot of bad luck with throws that have not been turnover worthy, that have ended in turnovers. A lot of, like the first interception against the Rams, where JSN has the catch, bobbles it, and it goes right to the Rams player. He's had that quite a bit. The bad interceptions have been kind of recent development. The interceptions that are actually like bad throws have mostly cropped up in the last few weeks. So
yeah, you got the Dolphin game too, where Calais Campbell tips the ball on a throw. I think he had a couple of those. So that's not, to your point, that's not turnover worthy plays at that point. So I don't think it is the fatal flaw thing, like you say. I think it's just that this is you've gone through a full year of, for the most part this season, asking Geno to kind of play in that superhero mode, and that this is what you get when you start to kind of push the quarterback to do that. And we just have to draw back on that mentality, I think, a little bit.
Thank you, Randy.
Appreciate you, Randy.
One
sec here. Give me 1 sec here, Brandon.
All right. No problem. Not a problem here. Seth, thank you for the $4.99. Leonard is a beast. Money well spent in my book. I need to get his jersey. P.S. Love the Niners struggles. Well, yeah, Leonard Williams, I'm really happy that he looked as good as he did in this game, because, again, I was worried about him because of that foot injury. He wasn't practicing. He missed 2 practices last week. And I was thinking to myself, okay, what can we expect from him the rest of the way when he's less than 100%? Well, apparently he is 100%, or he doesn't need to be 100%, because that was the best game he's played in quite some time. And we're going to lean heavily on that, because Byron Murphy's getting double teamed at a really high rate, and Byron Murphy is not getting home a lot because of it. So it's going to be on Leonard Williams to win his matchups and get pressure. And if he can play like that in every game the rest of the season, then we're going to have a lot of success just by virtue of that. As for the Niners struggles, yeah. I mean, I made a whole video this morning, or excuse me, Monday morning, about how this might be the end for the Niners. And you look at it, it's hard to imagine them replacing all of this talent with equivalents. All right.
Sorry about that.
Not a problem. Welcome back. All right. So basically, I was just looking at this one, talked a little bit about Leonard Williams. Yeah, he's that contract. I don't know if he's going to ultimately earn every penny of that contract, but right now he's worth that contract for sure.
It was a great deal at the time, one that we both supported at the time, and have supported every step of the way. Leonard came in here last year, had to play an extra whole game on the season, 18 games. Every game he was finding a way to make some kind of impact in the game. He wasn't taking over games like he did this last week, but he has been a consistent performer. He's had games where he's come very close to kind of even the Denver game, the opening week of the season this year, where he's been very close to this kind of performance. And it's why you had to give up what you had to give up. It's why you had to spend what you had to spend, because these guys are hard to find. And he's making them look good. I will say, too, about the longevity aspect of it, is that these defensive tackles that can tend to last in this league and that can go beyond their 30s and continue to perform really well are those guys that are the bigger, freakish guys. Your Calais Campbell guy that's playing at 40 is playing partially because he's 6'7" with gargantuan long arms that, never was really about his quickness or his twitch necessarily what he did. Now that's a little bit with Big Cat and his movement, but I think this guy's going to age very well as a player too.
Yeah. This game from Leonard Williams, little clowny 2019 against Niners memories, a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Might be the most dominant individual defensive game performance for a Seahawks player since Clowney in the Niners game.
I think there's a good argument to be made. I don't know who we would go to instead of that. So I can't have another performance that supersedes it.
Right. And yeah, the Niners struggles. I made a half-hour-long video on Monday morning about how it looks like the Niners window has closed. And you go down that roster, it's really hard to imagine them replacing all of these aging and in some cases already aged players with anything close to an equivalent in the next year or two.
Yeah, my guy Jesse out there, Last Second Sports, Niner content creators, thinking like 2027 is going to be the next time that they're going to have to wait to get to be back to being competitive. They've got a lot of bad money on the books and older players in the books, and it's just getting started, that process for them this offseason, where they have not been managing it well as it is. And so they've got some acrobatics to do if they're going to turn this around by next year and get back to being a contender again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, at this point, I think it's probably justified because you go up and down that roster. Trent Williams might retire this offseason and collect a ton of guaranteed money. A guy like a Kyle Juszczyk, who's been the best fullback in the league for a while now, and maybe the only truly impactful fullback in the sport. He's pretty much at the end. Debo looks washed up. McCaffrey doesn't look the same. You go down the list, it's like, how are they going to get out of this one?
Well, and they're currently at $16.5 million of dead money for next year's cap right now. That's with Eric Armstead, Cameron Latou, Danny Gray, Jaron Kingston. That's before they get to any of the other cuts that they want to potentially make. I think you're right about. There's no way I think you can keep Debo after this year. You're going to lose Jadarius Ward probably after this season. There's going to be some pain here as well. It's guys that can't get out of it. Like Hargrave. You bare minimum the deal on that through the first 2 years is the base salary. So you can't afford to just release him right now because there's no savings to be had, because you, like they've done on all their contracts, you base minimum everything down the line as far as you can. You drop everything else into the bonus money for a couple of year period on these big deals. You do that over and over and over again on these big contracts you sign. And then you're going to make the pain hurt that much more when you get a couple of years down the line, the window's closed, where we're at right now, basically. And so it's inevitable kind of to a Super Bowl run, but especially when you drive it out this far. They could have made a decision at the start of the year, Brendan, to say, okay, let's start to pivot this down a little bit. Yes, let's still be competitive this year, but we're coming off a Super Bowl losing season. There's usually a Super Bowl hangover. Brandon Ayuk, maybe we move that with Jawan Jennings' emergence, with drafting Ricky Pearsall. I mean, they were setting the stage to me on that one where it was either Debo or Brandon, but they wanted to keep everybody. They wanted their cake and eat it too. And now they're going to pay the price for that.
Right. And their attempts to like artificially stretch the window a little bit, like Devondre Campbell and Leonard Floyd, not looking that great. Like their attempts to pry open that window a little bit. I feel like that's got to cost John Lynch his job at some point. Like I'm a Shanahan guy, but I don't think Lynch needs to be sticking out there much longer.
Well, it gets hard because we hear that Shanahan's the de facto general manager. And so really, I think what they got to do is it's probably going to Shanahan doing what you did with Holmgren back in the day, where you said, okay, you're a great coach. You're not necessarily a great general manager. So we're going to have our general manager be that, and you be the coach. And maybe that's, instead of firing, that's probably what the Niners do instead.
Yeah, I don't know about letting Lynch be that guy, though. He's probably got bad CTE. I don't know if I want that guy running my team, you know?
Well, he's got a lot of those. Any one of those hits from his career could have caused it on its own.
Yeah, so I would bring in somebody else that I trust more to be a GM, but it's not like Lynch has gotten a great shot at it if Shanahan's been the de facto GM the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, and think about it. I mean, you're going to fire him, and he's off of a Super Bowl. He got you to a Super Bowl last year. He's gotten you since John Lynch has come there. He's been a great general manager, at least as far as what he's producing on the field, as far as the results go. And it is a little bit like the Coach Carroll Schneider thing. You know, how do you hold the guy responsible when he doesn't ultimately get the decision making?
Mm-hmm. But I think that the Niners. I think they're pretty much toast at this point. They pretty much have a guaranteed loss this weekend, and they still have to play the Lions. They still play the Dolphins, by the way. The Dolphins are now kind of back in the fight here, so they could really lose pretty much every game they play the rest of the year pretty easily, especially if they don't get some of these players back.
Yeah, they're going into Buffalo, bad elements. It's going to be a cold game Sunday night. It's going to be cold as hell. That's not good for a warm weather team who we've seen them going to Green Bay at times and not always be
Yeah.
comfortable in that environment. So I think it's not set up well for them on that. Their health isn't good. Yeah, I think that this is the week where they probably fully get put to bed on this one. But
Yeah, if
they lose them all.
they make Purdy play this weekend, Shanahan needs to go to prison. Like, that would be mean.
Well, they're going to. They're desperate. They know they lose this game. I think they know that's all she wrote. But I mean, even Bosa, we saw how bad a shape he was in a couple weeks ago after you step out of the game during the home stretch of the game. You're going to tell me 2 weeks later that he's up to snuff and somehow ready to be who he is normally? I don't think I buy that.
Yeah, and Trent Williams is 37 years old. There's no way he healed up as quick as he needed to.
Yeah. I think I would be I can't see how they pull this win out now. They're desperate where Buffalo is not. Buffalo might be kind of just into that cruise control. We're just kind of rolling, but that'd be more a game for me if Niners were playing home. I might feel that way, but going out to Buffalo on the road, and it's a prime time matchup, so you know that the Buffalo team is going to be turned up for that.
Luis, thank you for the $4.99. How do you think we will approach the upcoming draft, considering how weak it is? Very interesting question.
I'm still not totally convinced or sure that this is going to be a weak draft. And Luis, you're not wrong in that this is what's being spoken about in it. So there's a consensus or narrative surrounding the draft that this is one that's going to be so much weaker, I guess, than prior years of drafts or last year's draft. I keep coming back to feeling like this is really extending out of the fact that the draft doesn't have the blue chip guys as much. Because when I've looked at some of the initial stuff on some of these guys and going in and looking at them, I see some value there into the second, third, fourth round. And I see a decent amount of it on early look-see. Now, I haven't gone to the depths of this draft and looked at 300 guys to make really that final assessment on weak or strong, but the NIL money is allowing these guys to stay in the draft a little bit longer, and you're getting guys out more refined because of that, because they played the extra college season where normally they would have come out the prior year, been a third-round pick with some first-round potential if they'd waited the year after. So I don't know if I'm in the same boat on it, where I think that it's at that spot. To your question on answering it, if it is weak, Luis, that's where you've got to stay into the pocket of value-based drafting model. Because if you now start to pick for need in a weak draft, you can see right there how that's taking you to Trouble Town. 2 tickets to Trouble Town fast on that, because you're going to start reaching for need on a player who's not very talented since it is a weak draft. Go for value. Who's the best guy you got on your board? Let that drive your board, and you will come out, even in a weak draft, if it is, with a very strong draft, or at least as strong a draft as you could have put together considering the level of talent.
Yeah, I think it's a weak draft on offense and then a strong draft on defense. So I think it's probably on the average about an average draft. If I had to make a ruling there, I think the defense is actually strong. I think this is a great edge class. I think that it's a great cornerback class. The safety class is strong. So I like the defense. I just think the offense is a little bit weak because the offensive line, interior especially, is not that good. And the quarterback spot is rough. But even on the offensive side of the ball, like, Jean-T might be the best running back since Saquon. And a lot of people think he's better than Saquon. So receivers good, tackles pretty good. Like, I don't think it's that bad. I just think it's a little bit weak at the quarterback spot more than anything.
I think I'm completely with you on the quarterback, but even tackle with Will Campbell, Emory Jones, 2 guys out of LSU, the Texas kid that's probably going to be kicked into guard. That would be an exact kind of guy that we would look at as an interior kind of guy guard. Donovan Jackson, Ohio State, Tyler Booker, Alabama guard. Wyatt Milliam, West Virginia left tackle that probably kicks into left guard. Tate Ratledge, the guard from Georgia that you and I have been watching for a couple of years. Bryce Foster, Texas A&M. Parker Brailsford, 2 centers. Jaden Roberts, Alabama, another I believe upside right guard. Luke Condra, Cincinnati. Solid right guard prospect. And these are just the initial guys I've taken a look at. I haven't even gotten into the depths on that within interior line play. So that's where I'm a little hesitant, where I'm like, wait, when I'm watching these just initial guys that aren't necessarily being looked at as, blue chip guys that are going top 15, but are just good quality kind of linemen. And that's my initial look-see as I haven't gotten to the depths. That makes me start to think, well, maybe this thing will be a little bit better. But the quarterback's absolutely valid. But even on the quarterback, it's got good depth. doesn't have good star power, but you can't deny, Brendan, there's depth in this draft from the quarterback position as far as the number of guys draftable grades coming out in this class.
Yeah. It's just tough with the quarterback because it feels like people are kind of in the mentality now where if you're not a star, then you're nobody.
Yeah.
And
That's absolutely
I
true.
get it because a quarterback feels like either you have it or you don't. And there's not a lot of room in the middle right now. But you got a guy like the LSU guy, Nussmeier. I don't know if you've had a chance to really look at him too much, but there's a little bit of Will Levis there. He could be a guy who needs to fix his decision making, and if he does, you've got a really talented guy. Drew Allard to me is really interesting, the Penn State guy. People completely wrote off Connor Wegman from the A&M guy because he got hurt, and then he had, I think, week 1 he had a terrible game, but he could still get better. Maybe he won't be in this class because he barely played this year, but there are some guys that are kind of in that middle that maybe you hope they get better. It happens.
Yeah, you've got, even Riley Leonard's, Curtis Rourke, Jalen Milroe. I think you're right about the talent stuff. I mean, I look at a guy like Drew Aller, and I was watching the other night, Brendan. I see Joe Flacco, which isn't, no one's going to get excited by Joe Flacco as a, the quarterback prospect. But hey, Joe Flacco is a former first-round pick. There's reason that there is some talent there in what he brought. But yeah, I think people want to see more of those true blue upper end kind of guy, the Drake May type guys that came out last year, and they're just not those guys in the draft. But we do know John's got a track record of potentially maybe looking for a guy in that second, third round range on that rookie contract if he builds up the rest of the team around it to bring into the mix of the quarterback competition. And I could see him doing that again like he once did 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was a Tankathon actually had the Seahawks picking Nussmeier in the second round, which I mean, I'm a little more third round on him right now, but it's not a terrible idea. Like he's got an arm. He's got a hose, as they say.
Yeah, late second round pick is not bad, which looks like that may be where we're picking at this point. And so if you get him there, that's okay too. I'm with you. It'd be great to get him in the third, but if you got him late second, that's not if they're sold on him and they're really on board with him at that point, that's not the worst of places to go take him.
Flacco had a good NFL career, by the way. There's nothing wrong with Joe Flacco. He's just not a Hall of Famer. No,
I like Aller's tape. I do. So it's, these guys have impressive tape. You can see where there's the limited, like with him, it's the scrambling, the getting out of trouble. How can you work around that now? First where it was 10 years ago with Flacco came in, 13 years ago when Flacco came in, and then you could still be a bit of a pocket passer and work. Can that work now? Maybe with the spread system. And if the offensive line gets better built, you can get around a little bit, some of that, but he can definitely throw it, man. He's got I think he's a coach's son, is Nussmeier, so you can really feel the refinement of mechanics with him too, where the footwork's in the right place when he's moving between progression reads. It's a little bit like CJ Stroud would a couple of years ago, where you get the guys that'll just sort of turn their head through the reads, and then you get the guys that are actually flipping their hips and turning their shoulders to the targets as they're going through it. It's hard to do, but as you're doing that, you're better setting yourself up to get the throw off quick and be ready to make the throw as you get to the read. Versus I see it, now I'm going to throw it, right? Where there's a little bit more of the anticipation there. He does a really good job of that, where it's just he's always resetting himself through his progressions.
Yeah, and one guy who I've kind of had my eye on that has completely dropped off the radar is Klubnik in Clemson. Like he is, I think, somebody who should be like a 5th round pick in this draft, and right now he's considered a UDFA guy. I don't know why.
Well, there'll be a lot of UDFA guys that might have been in prior years 5th round grade guys, because this draft's so full of guys that are into that 4th, 5th round range. It's really weird. It's wild versus other years. It's like 3-4 times the numbers of what we've seen in prior years in that spot of the draft for the quarterback position.
Yeah. DVN, thank you for the $20. Just felt like donating, no questions. You guys watch your content way more than TV, even at work overnight.
Appreciate you, DVN.
Down with legacy media. Down with legacy media, right?
That's right, man. It's dying out, DVN. So this is the new way. This is the new model. This is where it's going. And I thank you for that, man. A longtime supporter, I know, in both of our channels on that side of it. It's very much appreciated. Yeah,
Brandon, if you got invited to go on the Joe Rogan podcast, you'd do it, right? You would do that.
Yeah. I'll go on just about anybody's podcast, though. So I mean, it's all an opportunity the way I look at it with that. But 100%. I think this is where, look, you can go and look on TV and stuff, and I think that there's just not a lot of substantive talk sometimes when you get into those ESPN, Fox News, scream at each other, sort of debate things, and it's gotten very one note. I think cable television with covering sports and how they cover it, and it's boring at that. But we're trying to seek to get a little bit better on that and improve where they're at with it, and hopefully it's coming off that way. DBN.
Yeah. I mean, if you had the choice between going on Joe Rogan or going on ESPN, I think the choice is pretty obvious if you want exposure.
Yeah. Well, it'd be funner on the other end too. You know, ESPN would be lame questions and lame topics and, you know, stuff that's like, okay, who cares? You know, let's talk about the Cavs. Jerry Jones, the right owner for the Cowboys. Yeah, can you imagine 20 minutes on this? Oh, jeez.
Yeah, or even Barstool Sports, probably better.
Yeah, I'd do Barstool Sports. You know, that'd be a wild one. You're gonna be drunk. You might wake up in Paris or something.
Yeah, you don't know where that conversation's gonna go, but you're probably getting better exposure.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah, and he also left a $20 on my channel. So
let's
thank
go,
you, DVN.
Let's go, man. You're
awesome.
Both
ends of it. Both ends of it. Helping keep the lights on.
Very much appreciate. That's right. Help keep the lights on out here, DVN. Thank you for that, man.
Yeah, and my lights did stay on. Everyone else in the state lost power but me. I think it was last week, right? Everybody else in the state lost power, but my lights stayed on.
You were like that. The old thing when you used to watch Halo when they'd show you. Remember the old thing when you play Halo and they'd show you who's playing in the world?
Yeah.
You see all the lights and you're the one with a light on in the Pacific Northwest.
David Pugh, thank you for the $9.99. Unrelated. The hatred towards the Chiefs from Seahawks fans feels so forced nowadays. They have single-handedly made sure the Niners' last Super Bowl win was before the internet was invented 2 times now. God bless. I actually agree. I agree with this sentiment overall. The only thing with the Chiefs would be the fact that they are the teacher's pet of the league, admittedly. But I don't have a big problem with the Chiefs overall compared to other teams out there.
Yeah, I know. Thank you again to DVN for those double dip $20 donos, and David, thank you for the 10er. Man, you guys are unbelievable in your guys' support. We really do appreciate it. Can I say where I think this probably comes from? And I don't think it's as much about anger towards the Chiefs. You touched on it. It's not as much about them winning Super Bowl championships. Fans right now are rightfully so, in my opinion, very sensitive to the fact that there are shenanigans going on in these games at times, and not just our game, but just in some of these NFL games. And it's that they don't necessarily have confirmation that the stuff's being somewhat jimmied with, right? The results are being somewhat jimmied with, like, let's say from a New York centralized location in some of these games. They don't know for sure that it's that way. And what you have with the Chiefs is the NFL driving a situation as close to that line of certainty that something is rotten in Denmark without completely crossing the line. And so fans, in my opinion, this way I feel a little bit like it. It's like the NFL is insulting us with some of this stuff. And here's the most blatant example of it. And you sometimes get it on a weekly basis. And that's where I can get a little bit of the anger from fans, because they want a level playing field. We don't want WWF. You don't want your fans thinking there's a 10% chance that this sport's WWF. And I'm not saying it's a 10%, but when you watch the Chiefs and what's going on with them, and watch them game by game, when you watch the right tackle jump offsides 35 times a game, you go, no holding calls from Mahomes. So I'm not in a hate for the Chiefs. It's more of the hatred for the NFL not letting the game sometimes feel like they're playing it fully straight up. I'm not saying fully rigged, but just, juicing the books a little bit.
Yeah, and I can definitely understand that. There is a little bit of that going on, but I think this comment does touch on something. The Chiefs have kept the Niners out of the winner's circle twice now, and I appreciate that. I have appreciation for that. I think that it's impossible to become a team that wins a lot and not become hated. Like, I remember 15 years ago, everyone loved the Warriors. They were like this young upstart team on a sad sack franchise that hadn't won anything in 40 years. And they're like, oh, wow, this Curry guy is so fun to watch. And the Splash Brothers, everybody loved them. Then they won a couple titles. And then it was like, everybody hates them now. The Clippers, when they got Blake Griffin and CP3, everyone loved them. Lob City, everyone loved Lob City. And then after a couple years, they didn't even win a title. They just won some playoff series. And people were like, oh, I hate this team now. I want them to go away. It's hard to win and not become hated. I'll put it to you like that.
Yeah, that's valid. That's totally
Mhm.
true. I will say our Legion of Boom teams were pretty well loved
Mm,
by most.
not by the people I hung out with.
Hmm.
They
Or
they turned on him quick. We won the
huh.
Super Bowl, and everybody just wanted to punch Sherman in the mouth because he talked too much, and everyone wanted to say that Russell Wilson was Trent Dilfer 2.0, and I think it's hard to have success and then not get hated.
Yeah,
Mhm,
that's valid. That's
mhm.
valid.
So if they hate you, you're doing something right, is what I'm trying to say here.
Probably, or the NFL's helping you win games. One of the two.
Yeah, that too. That doesn't help. I mean, I hated the Patriots. I'll say that. Even before they beat us in the Super Bowl, I couldn't stand that team. I was sick of that team.
Yeah, but that's also a team that did its share of stuff to make the average fan not like them. I mean, they openly cheated at how many turns?
Hmm.
I mean like your hand got and that was you're already great and you're cheating on top of being great. Like that to me that's not you're getting hate because you win. That's you getting hate because of the fact that you know cheated and you
Yeah.
cheated blatantly a couple times over and you never owned up to it really. You just kind of shrugged and moved on to the next cheat.
Hmm. Yeah, and maybe for the old heads, people remember when the Chiefs and Seahawks were division rivals, but a lot of these kids, they don't remember that. They weren't even alive when that was the case. So I've
I don't
always
think
wondered if that played a factor, but I don't know if it does.
no, I swear I think it just comes down to just there's a general feeling about fandom that the Chiefs are being given the golden pathway every year, and that they're being set up for this a little bit. They're still a very good team on top of it. Mahomes great, and Andy Reid great, but that the NFL is then helping them in addition to that. And you go, that's where I think people see this stuff pretty clearly, Brendan. And it's one of those things that will piss you off as much as anything as a fan because it's not a level playing field, and that's where the sport's not leveled as a playing field at that point. Then people are going to get out of whack on it. And I think rightfully so.
Hmm. Yeah, but thank you, David Pugh. Definitely something worth noting, I think. Better them than the Niners. I'll put it. I think we can all agree on that.
Yes, I agree there for sure.
Roy Froelich, thank you for the $5 Canadian. Please reassure me we will beat the Jets. Uneasy about this game. I think this super chat's a good opportunity to do what we set out to do when we started this stream and talk about this New York Jets. They're kind of a football team, but right now they feel a little less like a football team and a little more like I don't know, a circus. Doesn't really feel like a football team right now, do they?
Not really. It's just disjointed parts that are all kind of not working together in conjunction with each other that they've sort of put together, I think, a bit. I think that I do have some uneasiness that Roy has on this game coming into it, quite frankly, Brendan, because you do look at some of the peripherals here on this game, and it's not just your typical 3-8 kind of game. Rodgers, yes, not the same, maybe dealing with a lower leg injury, but they've got talented running backs. They have an offensive line in place that can get the job done there. They have a front four that could rush the passer well enough. That's given us, I mean, what I'm trying to say is they can kind of go after where we've got vulnerabilities at times this year across the board. And that makes this a bit of a game that leaves me uneasy as well.
Right. Right. You look at this Jets team, the things that stand out, they can't stop the run and they can't run the ball. And we've learned the hard way that this Seahawks team does not care if you can stop the run or can't stop the run. They still can't run it. So that right there gives you a little bit of pause because you're like, okay, now we're going to have to throw the ball out. We're going to have to throw the ball against Quinnen Williams. And, well, Sauce Gardner's not even been good this year. I'm not even going to talk about that. Sauce has been like, I don't know what's happened there. He's completely fallen apart. But there's still some talent in that front seven. They might get CJ Mosley back this week. And, there are some good players. More than anything, it kind of feels like that they might be on the verge of quitting. It's not a matter of talent. It's a matter of, do they want to play hard for this clearly lame duck coach? And do they want to play hard for this clearly lame duck last 6 games of a lost season?
Yeah, I think if you get them in that place where their mindset's even halfway there, Brendan, considering what you have on the line, you win this game. I tend to think that we're going to get their best kind of effort. And when you do look at them through the NFL this year with the Jets as bad as they played, they've been able to keep it pretty close in games, even against couple blowouts, but a couple of games they've kept in there very close against even teams that probably should have outpaced them by quite a bit. And that just gives me a little bit of hesitancy and pause in this game where you stayed within 3 points of this Viking team or 3 points of that team that's a very solid team. So I get concerned looking at this one on the outside, looking in just a little bit on that, because I don't think that they're going to drop their guard for it, but I just think that they've got a structure set there with their talent that can attack us where we're just a little bit vulnerable on that side of things. And we're going to have to overcome that.
Right. So going to be an interesting matchup here because numerically, and I'm not saying this necessarily means a lot, they've been one of the best pass defenses in the league this year. Now, a big reason why is because teams just run the ball on them and they don't stop it very well, and you get what you get. But they have actually been very good against the pass this year. Will McDonald is having a big year so far. I think he's got like 8 sacks or something. Quinnen Williams, we know about him. Michael Clemens, we know what's up there. Javon Kinlaw, kind of sort of starting to rebuild his career a little bit, having an okay year. They can throw some pretty serious pass rush at you. And against this Seahawks offensive line, those guys are probably very excited to pad their stats.
Yeah, no, they will, and they're going to want to, they'll see the tape on this offensive line and say, hey, we'll get after it. So you have that thing where you get behind the sticks here, you get it where you're not running the ball in early downs. You're into that 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 territory, which has been that's the worst spot for us to be, because now our pass protection issues get raised up. We know with Grubb, he doesn't necessarily have a great answer there when he's into 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. He wants to be in 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5s. And you got to get there by running the ball more cleanly on early downs to get to that spot of things. So, if you can't, and they're able to, pin their ears back with the front four, they're all, at the very least, Brendan, threats to get to the quarterback. They're not just like, Cardinals last week were trotting you at times. 1/4 of that offensive line was probably truly a threat to really, I know guys like Collier got a sack, but I'm talking about true threat playing and play out. Whereas this Jets defense, you've got threats all across the board. They've got depth that they can swing guys in, like Michael Clemens, where he's coming off the bench and he's going to be fresh enough to come. So that's where I say that's a place where they can get after you a bit there. And you're going to have to run the ball. You're going to have to keep yourself out of those 3rd and long situations.
Yeah, and that I think is worth being a little bit worried about. The matchup on that side is not that great. And like you said, I mean, this Jets team beat the Houston Texans a couple weeks ago, and the Texans are actually a lot like the Seahawks. They are a team that is poised to maybe contend for a title this year were it not for the offensive line. Houston has a terrible offensive line, and it's having a very negative effect on CJ Stroud. It's having a very negative effect on that team in general, and the Seahawks are kind of in the same spot.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, and that was a brutal game for the Texans as far as their line goes. It looks very similar to Seahawks games throughout this year, where they were just completely collapsed in that game, and it did destroy. It took their whole offense down. They had no ability to make anything really run and really go.
Yeah, and watching that game, it made me realize that CJ Stroud basically is Geno Smith. Like that's kind of what he is right now. They're both the same guy. They can switch uniforms like Freaky Friday today, and nobody would notice. They're the same player.
Agreed. Yeah, it's pretty much the same guys.
Right. So, little bit concerned about our offense against their defense. Ryan Grubb's going to have to come up with something better than he came up with against the Cardinals, because Gannon, I think, ate his lunch a little bit. And while I will say the Jets, they don't have Saleh anymore. And that's a big thing, because I think Saleh's a good coach, and I don't think Jeff Ulbrich is a good coach. So that helps, but their defense has still not been atrocious this year. It's been about average.
Well, and it's the same thing that you get with the Niners on the wide 9 defensive line too, Brendan, where like we've seen with how we've run the ball against the Niners is that there are natural opening cracks in the wide 9 and A and B gaps especially that you can exploit. It's an easier said than done deal, because the defenses are typically very good at still playing the run despite those natural gaps. But for instance, the Packers last week against the Niners on the road, Josh Jacobs, perfect kind of back to attack that sort of wide 9, who's a bigger back, so he's hard to bring down, but he also has that bounce between the gaps. So if you press one gap hard, he can bounce over to this gap on the other backside and exploit you overrunning the gap a little bit. But those gaps still remain. We got to be able to run a ball on them and take advantage of them, because they're not going to blitz. They're going to drop a lot of guys back into coverage and trust that front four by and large. So run the ball early, run it on those gaps, get yourself into 3rd and shorts and 3rd and makeable, so you don't have to hold on the ball for a long period of time in the pocket.
Right. All right. So that is the situation with the Jets defense. Let's talk about the side of the ball that you might feast on a little bit with the hapless, miserable New York Jets offense. And the thing that really stands out to me is the Jets, they're kind of like the Seahawks. They have made pretty big investments into their running game. And not just the running backs, although they've got Braylon Allen, they've got Brees Hall. They've invested pretty big into that spot. They've also invested into this offensive line, and they still cannot run the ball. They have less than 1,000 yards rushing as a team through 11 games. They are right near the bottom of the league in rushing. How does that happen? How do you make that investment and still not be able to run the ball at all?
Well, I don't really have a good answer for you because of the fact that when you look at the linemen, at least as far as their grades go on PFF and watching the games, it's been fairly similar to this. I mean, part of the problem is that Rodgers just can't move anymore back there in pass protection. But when it comes to run blocking, they've got guys with good run blocking grades like Joe Tippmann, like Tyron Smith, Elijah Vera Tucker. I mean, these are grades we would die for on our line. As far as run blocking grades go, it's to a man kind of. Even a Morgan Moses, it's fairly legitimate even at his grade where he's at. Again, we would kill for a right tackle. Morgan Moses 65 overall grade on the year and what he's brought. So when I look at the line, I go, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me because they put the investment in it. They're getting the pretty good performance from it. A Tyron Smith, who you're really worrying about coming from the Cowboys because of how old he is and how injured he was with the Cowboys, especially around that end point. And he's staying upright for him. He's performing well across the board for him. So, you've got a former second-round pick, the guy that was picked ahead of Kenneth Walker and Brees Hall, averaging 4.2 yards per carry. Braylon Allen, good Wisconsin running back that they've got as a backup. But what I'm just saying is it just doesn't make any sense to me why it's not going, Brendan, because it seems like the peripheral numbers here would tell you that it's a consistent running game, but you're right in that it hasn't been.
Yeah. Do you blame the play calling for it, or are they just not running the ball enough? Is that the problem?
I mean, if I'm to look at some of the grades and what I've seen, that maybe you just don't have the talented running backs to do it at this point. Has Brees Hall gotten back off that ACL injury that he had a couple of years ago, and is he back to really anywhere what he was before? I don't know that he is. I don't really have a great reason on this as to what I'm seeing is why it's this way. It shouldn't be this bad. They've put so much investment in offense. I mean, Olu Fashanu was their number one pick this year, and he can't even get on the field because you got the offensive line, and he's there to be the backup if Tyron goes down. He's essentially, they were thinking, well, Tyron will go down at some point, and then we'll throw Tyron or Morgan Moses will go down, and we'll put him out there when one of those two guys, those elder statesmen, go down. They had a great plan for it. And it's kind of worked, but it's not worked. So I don't know. I'm scratching my head kind of looking at it.
Yeah, it's a very Jets thing, right? You have every reason to have a good rushing attack and then not be able to run the ball at all. It makes sense.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, it's weird. Vera Tucker at right guard. I mean, it should be much better than they are.
Right. So that's kind of that part. And then, of course, the other part of this offense would just be the fact that Aaron Rodgers has finally truly and officially hit the wall. He's not what he used to be. I think the main thing that stands out watching him play is the complete and utter lack of mobility. And that is not the Aaron Rodgers that I grew up watching.
No, I've heard that maybe there's a hamstring injury on the left foot. I was watching some videos the other day where a guy was presenting this, and you could really, when you start to look at it and really lock in on it, when he wants to get down onto that front foot for the final throw, and the front, you're on that front foot as you're going through the throwing motion. He's sort of pulling his front foot off. You've seen him do that at times where he does that snap move where almost both feet end up off the ground with Rodgers. It's kind of his custom move, and Jordan Love's doing it too now. But he's doing it not because he's trying to be super cool with the move. It's like he's protecting that front foot when he's coming down. And I think that's why sometimes you get him on the blind throws where maybe typically in the past he would have held back the ball, like he starts his throwing motion, holds it back, but he's like, I got to go all the way through it with my leg where it is right now, and he just dirts it or throws it over a guy's head. He's got more throws this year where he's just sort of whistling it past the ear of both receiver and defender into a different plane from where the receiver's running. And I'll tell you, that comes down to me on something with him that stood out as a difference between him and Tom Brady when Tom Brady came to Tampa Bay. Because Tom came to Tampa Bay during the COVID year, brought those guys together during the offseason, got them onto that same page as much as he possibly could, which we know it was restricted being the conditions, and had them really rolling them by the regular season. Aaron Rodgers, he's out there doing his ayahuasca trips and his European tours, and I don't need to do any of that stuff. I'm good enough as it is. I'm so glad we are leaving the diva age of quarterbacks for this very reason, because you get numbskulls like him who go, I don't have to do all that stuff. I'm so great on my own that I'll just walk in there and I'll be instantaneously bomb. And go give me my receiver mid-year too, by the way, when it's not, this just pandering to this guy. He can go away really, really fast at the end of this year, quite frankly. But the stones on his part and the ego on his part to believe that he didn't have to do that same work, that he could just walk in and be him, Aaron, and that'll be good enough. Especially coming off that Achilles tear is kind of a joke in retrospect.
Yeah. It could be after this game, like the way we've heard. Like apparently Woody Johnson is kind of done with him. And that there might be a big push from the owner to just get Aaron Rodgers out of there after this game if it doesn't go well. And
I'd do it if I was the owner at this point.
Yeah. Is Jordan Travis healthy?
I don't know. He's coming off that leg injury he had last year, so there's an understandability if it was to take a whole year to get himself back through, but I mean, if I'm Woody at this point, I know nobody likes the word tank, but you're not going anywhere this year, and might as well start to pivot this thing forward. You fired your coach, fired your general manager, here we go. It is what it is. And I think from their standpoint, you're not going to make the playoffs. I mean, they got 8 losses, so technically you might get to like 9-8 this year in the AFC and still get yourself in the playoffs where there is that, but.
I mean, they still got one more game. They got one more game against the Bills. Like they're not winning that game, and even if they run the table otherwise, which is theoretically possible, it doesn't. It's not going to be enough.
I wouldn't think so, but I would have thought that they probably would have made that call already ahead of time if they were going to go with that moving off Rodgers thing. So,
yeah, it's they're saying now that he wants to play next year for another team. I don't know who's gonna make that happen. Like, why would you want to be part of that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who's the team that would sign up for that at this point. I don't, especially for a guy who's gonna still want to be paid high money, and I don't know the team that signs up for that. I don't, especially again too, because if he does have the hamstring injury, this is the second straight year with the lower legs. He's had a history of lower leg injuries. I wouldn't want to sign up for that at that age. He's not just getting like somewhat up there in the mid 30s. We're talking in their 40s now. And I think he can talk the big talk on that, but I don't even think Vegas would take him at this point. Tom would be like, no, Mark. Maybe before Tom got there, but Tom would be in there being like, no, Mark, don't do it. No.
Yeah. So maybe we will be the team to end the career of Aaron Rodgers. Maybe this will be the end. If we can force him to have a bad game and the Jets lose badly, maybe we'll be the team that finally took out like Michael Myers.
Fitting, because we took away a few of his, what he would say is his Super Bowl titles he should have had. He would have told you back in the Fail Mary game that they lost, that cost them getting into the playoffs as far as the bye and getting more of the home field advantage. Then they'll say, well, and then the 2014 game with the crazy finish in that conference championship. So it's fitting if we put the final nail in this coffin.
As for the rest of this offense, kind of surprised that Malachi Corley hasn't been a bigger part of proceedings there. He's done nothing, basically. He's been completely irrelevant.
He had the fly sweep for a touchdown a couple weeks ago against the Texans, and he dumped the ball just before he went into the end zone.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
But no, I'm surprised too. He was one of our kind of fun players coming out of the draft. We thought there'd be some Debo Samuel, kind of hints to it, but they don't seem to, when you watch the games with them, be trying to really work him in much either. They seem to be sticking with we got our guys on the outside, and then that's the part you wonder with the influence with sort of Rodgers, because Rodgers never really had sort of that gadgety guy. Randall Cobb was a slot. He wasn't as much running fly sweeps and bubble, little bubble screens, but for the most part, Packer wide receivers do wide receiver things, traditional wide receiver things.
Right. And they have to now. Maybe back in the day, they did a lot of off-script stuff, right? Because Aaron Rodgers was the off-script guy. Now he's not, and he can't. It's not even a possibility for him because of like you said, maybe the hamstring injury.
I think it's possible. It seems like when you watch the tape, he's just not quite able to stay up on that front foot, and that's one of those things they tell quarterbacks to always do on the throws is get out on that front foot. And I know he's got that move he does, but when he does the off the foot move, it tends to be with him off his back foot, where he's flip where the 2 feet kind of come off like that, where he's kind of just flipping it off the back foot, not when he's stepping into like a slant throw where you've got to put it on that front foot and like really get it in there.
So obviously we know the Jets can't run the ball. What do you think about their pass protection, though? Do you think they protect Rodgers okay?
Well, I think they do. The problem comes into that his mobility has really been removed down. He just can't get away from people. And what teams are doing a lot of in recent weeks, especially when they realize that he can't move anymore like he once did, is that they're bringing a lot of stacked fronts and blitzes, which I think Mike McDonald's going to do a lot of in this game, because then you're forcing him at that point to try to extend plays and show some of the pocket mobility to get away from that at times. And I don't think that he can. You get close to him and you're going to get him brought down to the ground. So that's been where teams have really blitzed the Jets in a way that Aaron Rodgers in his prime, you would never have dared do. You would have gotten slayed doing that. But as far as the offensive line goes, just straight up in pass protection, if you're just going to try to run a front four at them, they can pass protect pretty well overall on that side of it. They don't have any real big major weak links. Even John Simpson, John Simpson, the guard last year, remember with the Ravens, where he wasn't playing particularly, like he was the weak link for the Ravens. He's maybe been one of their bigger strengths this year as their left guard.
Yeah, so it's a good test for this pass rush, but they passed it last week. That Cardinals offensive line is good too.
Yep. They're up to snuff. And again, you might be able to do a lot more stuff in this game from McDonald's perspective. Again, since the last 3 weeks, he's been getting more into the depths of his playbook, knowing that he's going to look at that film in recent weeks with Rodgers and see the teams that are having the success and really putting those stack fronts and bringing those blitzes. And I'm sure he's going to probably say, let me tear a couple pages out of those guys' playbook and use that.
Yeah. So force the Jets into a lot of third and longs, which should be easy to do because they can't run the ball. And then you get to open up the playbook on Rodgers, and you should be good.
You should be good. You got the corners on the outside that can hold up on their guys. They've got good receivers. They do. Wilson's are really good. The kid out of Ohio State that they got with our pick for the Jamal Adams trade. And Devontae Adams is not quite fit back in there since coming over by the trade, but he still remains a very dangerous player off the edge. So we at least do have the corners. I think they can hold up pretty well against those guys, but it'll be another dictating point of the matchup here. It's how you handle those receivers on the edge.
Yeah, Breece Hall has been one of the best receiving backs in the league this year. He averages like over 4 catches a game, very productive. That's something to keep an eye on.
Yep.
And that was one thing the Cardinals did a little bit in that game. They couldn't get anything going with their running game, but they did get a little bit going on throwing the ball to, I think Connor had some yards through the air. So worth noting, worth keeping an eye on.
Yep. Definitely a place that I think teams will attack, because we will have a tendency at times, I think, to drop a little bit with depth to zone. And then that leaves sometimes those little short pop passes, the backs wide open.
Shaw, thank you for the $1.99. Seahawks fans know we always lose games like this. Well, Pete Carroll always lost games like this.
Yeah, I can see where this is a scary spot. It is 10 a.m. game on the road. Jets team might just very well be desperate, still thinking they have some chance, even though they have no business. So thinking they have a chance. A very talented Jets team. This is a team that wherever the record is, the talent on both sides of the ball is true. And it's not going to be one that you're just going to be able to just fold over. You're going to have to come out here and really take this game. And are we going to be ready to match that, get to that level of intensity on the road in this kind of game? I hope so, with knowing what is at stake, with being top division. But I don't think it's going to be an easy one.
Yeah, it feels like it's going to be an annoying game. It kind of feels like it might be kind of the way the Cardinals game was.
Yeah, agreed. I could see this completely being a sort of dirty, messy, mucked up kind of game a little bit, and how it breaks down.
Yeah. And speaking of Pete Carroll, did you hear the rumors the last couple of days about Pete Carroll and the
going to the Jets?
Yeah.
Now look,
that doesn't feel real, does it?
Well, look, Carroll wants to coach again. I mean, that's the thing with this, is that he does not want to not coach. So, on the surface of it, I think to your point, I initially went, really, Pete? But then on the secondary part, think about it. Robert Saleh was a Carroll acolyte. So the roster's been built up, at least especially defensively, to the way Carroll would like it from the type of guys. Sauce Gardner, he's got his Sherman. DJ Reed, he's literally coached DJ Reed. Now, I don't know if DJ would remain after this year. That he's playing another solid year. Boy, he's been so good for them. But that's the part that I came to in my mind where I went, well, the defensive personnel, he's got the front four there that he can trust to rush the passer. He can drop his coverages on the backside. They can restructure that offense through. He's got an offensive line in place now. So, I mean, it's one that, look, Carroll wants to go somewhere. He's not going to have every job. Like, they're not going to be lining up on his door like they would with Shanahan if Shanahan didn't have a job tomorrow. So, he might have to sort of take what he can get a little bit here. And all options being considered of the potential jobs that are out there, Brendan, I mean, you could do worse.
It's hard to do worse than Woody Johnson, if we're being real, though.
Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, there is worse, but Woody Johnson's not an owner I want to work for. Now, beggars can't be choosers, maybe, but I don't want to work for Woody Johnson.
I wouldn't either, but I do think you're in a little bit, if not on full-on beggar, you're making phone call solicitations. You know what I mean? You may not be on the street, hand them out, but you might be like, hey, you want to donate to the Coach Carroll Fund? You might be at that spot though, So I could see it on that.
You could go coach the Cowboys, Pete Carroll and the Cowboys. Could you imagine?
Him and Jerry Jones. Oh my God, that'd be just awful. He'd be hating life after about 3 weeks, I think. Just what I do.
Yeah, Giants might be worse than the Jets. I think Mara's low-key maybe a worse owner than Woody Johnson. He's been awful ever since he took over.
He might. At least the Mara family's got the Super Bowl track record, whereas the Jets with Johnson, that they've got nothing there to go off of. But I would say from a Carroll standpoint of where you'd want to go to get – look, Carroll's older. He's not going to want to go to a spot that he's got to rebuild everything from start to finish. The Jets got something actually kind of starting to go. So it's like I'm starting kind of – they're on their road on the process here, and I can kind of take this over from where they are in that process. I could see that as well fitting up to where he likes it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think we've talked about this game about as much as we can. We've talked a little bit about what the Jets do and what the Seahawks are going to try to do against them. So is there any other angle that you can think about this game from that we haven't touched on?
No. Just again, offensively, manufacture, trick plays, tunnel screens, throws to the flat, throws underneath to the backs, roll out of from under center, misdirection. I'd like to see Grubb encompass more of these items into the offense. And if we don't, it's going to be more of a struggle on this game to come away with the win.
Yeah. Fant might be back. I would expect him to be back because he was almost back for the Cardinals game. We know we won't have Bradford because he's on IR. Nwosu will not be back. They've already basically declared that, which I don't need Nwosu running around on the MetLife turf anyway, so I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm good with it too, as well. Yeah. We're needing for the home stretch here.
Yeah. And Shaw, thank you for the $1.99. He also points out that Breece Hall may not play. He did not practice today, which would leave the Jets with what?
Braylon Allen.
Braylon Allen, and is that it? I think
that
might be it. Do they don't have Garendo, right? For some reason, I kept thinking the Jets drafted Isaac Garendo, but that's the Niners. Yeah.
Isaiah Davis is the other guy listed on, but he's got hardly any other touches on their other back. So he's been in for he's in there for 3 games. He's got 6 total snaps. It's Isaiah Davis. So it is those two. It would be Braylon Allen. But Braylon's been the more effective runner of the two. The thing, though, with that is if Breece Hall doesn't play, Brendan, take a look at the pass protection, pass blocking scores for Braylon Allen. 40.8 as a pass protector. So you go out, you look at it on the surface, you say he's got a 73 grade. And I go down here and I look at Breece Hall and he's sitting at a 59. Why is Breece still getting all of these number 1 carries? Well, you can't trust the guy in pass protection that will, as a running back, keep you off the field.
Yeah, and I like Braylon Allen, but he is a power back, and that is something you can't use. That you can't always have a power back on the field.
Well, I think he had more speed before the ACL too. I think he's driving more and more to that power backish range because the speed's just not as much there, and he was a guy that had the combination coming out.
Yeah, and Giants loss still haunts, which I mean that's true. That one will never. Okay.
Yeah, it very well may come down to the end of the year here, where that is the one that sits over the top of us. Like last year, we had the Rams game. I think that was kind of that way, where it's just man, we should have got that win because this thing's just haunted. It is absolutely haunting us. I was running through some scenarios today where, you come through, you could beat the Cardinals again, you could beat the Rams at the end of the season and end up tied with the Rams, and through some bad tiebreakers, still end up losing the division at that point, which would be just completely brutal. But that's the reality of when you lost a game like that you shouldn't have lost. You had no business losing at home.
Yeah, that'll, I mean, we'll have to call that just a learning experience, but 15 years from now, Mike McDonald will have 3 Super Bowl rings as this coach of the Seahawks, and that Giants game will still not be okay.
No, it won't. Especially like Daniel Jones now released. He's now a Minnesota Viking, and that guy was cutting you apart on that day.
Yeah. I kind of wanted Daniel Jones. I think that would have been fun.
I can't with him. I just can't. The look
He's
on his
fun to
eyes.
root for. He's so likable.
those eyes when he's at the line of scrimmage.
He's likable, man. There's something to be said for that. He's fun to root for.
Maybe.
Until he starts playing, until he gets on the field.
Until he starts throwing the football.
Okay, so let's get a prediction on the board here. What are you feeling?
Well, I'm going to give the Seahawks the nod here, because I just do think that I'm going to fit to what I think has played out so far this year with the Jets. But I still say that my confidence level is not great on this one. You can almost put a 50-50 feeling in my mind on this with the coin flip, because I just think this Jets team is still really tough. They're going to still be giving you all the fight they got to give, and they match up well against your team from a personnel standpoint. I think it'll be a close game. We'll go 2017 Seahawks, able to get it with a field goal at the end, and pull it out.
I kind of feel like the Jets are about ready to roll over. I think that if the Seahawks come out strong on the first couple of drives, the Jets will just curl up. That's what I'm thinking. So I really hope that happens. I don't want this Jets team going into the third quarter thinking, oh, we could win this. Oh, we just got to show up for another hour and a half and we can win this. I want to give them an excuse to just think about Cancun.
Yeah. It's a good point about that is if you can get up on them early, you have to think if you're up by 10 points and it's late in the second quarter, that Cancun thoughts start to creep on into their brain.
Yeah, so I think that's on the table here. And I know the Seahawks are not necessarily the greatest starting team, but I think that if you can get on top of them, they are a team that just kind of rolls over. And I don't know if that's going to happen to the extent that we blow them out, but I do kind of like what Radu Turkan is barking up the tree here with his $1.99 super chat, 24-14 Hawks. I'm in that ballpark. I'm going to go 23-13 though. A little different, same idea though.
Back-to-back 10-point wins, man. That'd feel good. That'd feel real good.
Yeah, and there might be some drama. We might be up by a touchdown and the Jets have the ball, and then Rodgers turns it over, and then we kick the field goal to ice it, something like that. There might be some drama. I'm ready for the drama, but I think we find a way to win it, and I think that this defense will not allow them to lose the game ultimately because it just has been that good, and the Jets' offense has just been that bad.
Agreed. And I got a prediction right last week, Brendan. I called don't know if you remember, I called the Kobe Bryant interception shot, if you remember correctly. So I'm going to call the Tariq Woolen interception this week. See if I can go back-to-back weeks and be in the profit.
Yeah, Rodgers has been a little more interception prone these last 2 years. Last year in Green Bay, and this year so far, he's been throwing interceptions at a normal rate.
There we go. He's going to hit that effort phase. He's going to get that checkout phase in this game. Just throw one up for the hell of it.
And I'm ready for it, man. I'm ready for it. I'm feeling pretty good about this one. I will admit there are some things about the matchup that we talked about that are a little bit concerning, but I think this Jets team is ready to just throw in the towel on the season and think about 2025. You give them a reason to think about 2025, they're going to start doing it.
I agree. Put them down early.
And I think that's really all we got. I think that's all we can say about this one.
Yeah, let's go get this dub. Let's keep this season going, man.
Yeah. You lose this one, it's hard to imagine you bouncing back from that. This is one of those ones that you need to get if you want to be taken seriously. So let's make sure we do get it. Thank you everybody for being here today. Brandon, thank you for doing this with me today. Great show.
My pleasure. My pleasure, man. Always.
And yeah, I'm going to be jumping over on Twitch in not too long here, I believe. So if you want to come follow me over there, link down in my stream description. Going to be doing more metaphor. And we will do this again next week. Going to be moving back to the typical time in all likelihood, Thursday at noon instead of Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
So I am going to see you guys soon. And Brandon, once again, appreciate the show.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you too.
And look, guys, we're on a roll here. Things are going well. The Mike McDonald effect is starting to kick in here. We are seeing dividends getting paid on the coaching switch. And I'm really happy. I'm really excited. We have an opportunity to make this a successful season. We have an opportunity to get to where people like me and Brandon thought we were going to be by the end of this year still. We can get to that 10-win mark. It's in our sights. Just got to keep winning. So let's hit it and let's get out of here. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.